third grade citizenship. Welcome to social studies class. I'm so excited because it's a Friday and because we get to learn more about government today. And remember, for the next few days, our question is, does it matter how our leaders are chosen? And for today's focus, I'm in a little bit of trouble because even though we learned about different types of government yesterday, democracy, autocracy, dictatorship, oligarchy, I have no idea how I can put real world countries into those different categories to help me understand it better. So I'll show you a little tool that I'm trying to make in order to categorize some of these countries into the categories that we learned yesterday. And I really hope you can help me. So today's task is we're going to learn a little bit about 6 different countries around the world. And then after listening to a little bit about their government, who leads, and how those leaders are elected, we're going to put them into one of 3 categories. Rule by one, rule by a few, and rule by many. And I'm going to put the countries in the categories that I think are best. But I want you to make your own choices about where you think these countries fit. Your assignment for today is to follow along and hopefully make your own index cards and put some pieces of paper together to create the same kind of sheet that I made. And then in the comments in Google Classroom, put the name of a country and write what kind of government you think it is, based on which category you decided to put it on your organizer.
So once you have something that looks kind of like this, and I know you probably don't have chess pieces at home, but you can draw pictures if you want, or you can draw stick figures, you're going to want to make index cards like this, one for every one of the 6 countries that we're going to look at today, so that we can put these cards with the right description. How are leaders elected? Let's take a look at some real-world examples from 6 countries around the world. And the first one is China. China is a state ruled by a powerful central government. The head of state is the president, but the president is not elected by citizens. The National People's Congress is the group that elects the president, and the members of the National People's Congress are chosen by the Communist Party of China, and citizens only get to vote at the lowest levels of government. And this is a picture of Xi Jinping, who is the head of state in China, the president. Head of state means the person who represents that country across the world. I decided to put China in the category rule by few. Again, you can make your own choice about where you think it fits best. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a country led by one powerful king. The throne is inherited through the family, and the king appoints a council of people to help rule, but there are no elections. The king rules as an absolute monarch. An absolute monarch is someone who has total power over how the country runs. And monarch means that he's a king. And this is King Salman. His picture's right here. Now we have Saudi Arabia. Do you think Saudi Arabia belongs in rule by many, rule by few, or rule by one? I'll just remind you that in the description of Saudi Arabia, we learned that Saudi Arabia has a king, and that the king has absolute control over the country. Where do you think Saudi Arabia belongs? I think I'm going to put it in rule by one. Again, you can make your own choice. Just make sure you have a good reason why you put Saudi Arabia where you did. Now let's talk about Switzerland. In Switzerland, citizens elect representatives, and the Federal Council, which is pictured right here, is a group of 7 people who act as the head of state. Citizens also vote several times a year to decide on laws, and all citizens can vote directly on these laws. Remember, when we see the word directly, it means that citizens can actually vote on the laws that are being passed, and it means they don't have to elect representatives who vote on their laws for them.
Switzerland is an interesting choice because there are 7 people which are the head of state in Switzerland. It sounds like they don't have a president like our country or like China. So one thing I remember from the description of Switzerland is that several times a year, citizens get to vote directly on laws. That sounds like rule by many to me. So I'm going to put Switzerland here.
And here is North Korea. In North Korea, one man rules the country and controls its government. And he also controls its ruling political party. A political party is a group of people who kind of think the same way about how a government should run. The ruling party chooses candidates for an assembly, and citizens vote. But the candidates have no opponents, so the citizens have no real choices about who to elect.
Our description of North Korea says that one man controls the country and has power over it. It also says, even though the citizens vote, that they don't have choices between people that they want to vote for. There's only one person. So that doesn't sound like rule by many to me. I think it belongs in one of these 2 categories. I'm going to put it in rule by 1. You can make your own choice.
And here's our own country, the United States. The head of state in the United States is the president, and the citizens vote indirectly. Remember, that means they vote for someone who represents them to vote for the president through the Electoral College, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the Electoral College is later. In order to prevent one person from having too much power, there are 3 branches of government. Citizens vote for members of Congress, and the president can appoint judges to the Supreme Court. And so the president in the United States represents one branch of the government. And the citizens can vote indirectly for the president.
United States. Even though the United States has one president, there are also 3 branches of government that try to balance out power between the president and Congress and the Supreme Court. And citizens get to vote on members of Congress, and they also get to vote indirectly on the president. That definitely doesn't sound like rule by 1. So I think it belongs in one of these 2 categories. I'm going to put it next to rule by many.
Now let's look at Thailand, which we learned a little bit about in class earlier this year. In Thailand, there is a king, but he has little direct power. The head of government is a prime minister, who is appointed by the king after being chosen by members of parliament. Members of parliament are elected by citizens. And here's a picture of the king of Thailand right now. His name's really long and complicated, so we'll just call him King Rama X.
We just learned that Thailand has a king, but that the king doesn't have much direct power over what happens in the country. So that doesn't sound like rule by 1 to me. It also says that citizens get to elect members of parliament. So I would put it in one of these 2 categories. Based on the description that we just read, I think it belongs in rule by many. You can put it in whatever category you want as long as you have a good reason why. Here's a quick look at what my final product looks like. Thank you so much for the help today. And again, I'm really curious about where you decided to put the countries in the categories that we laid out. So again, your assignment for today is, in a comment on Google Classroom, give the name of a country and then write what kind of government you think it is. Is it rule by 1, rule by a few, or rule by many? If you want to pick Thailand, for example, you write Thailand, comma, rule by few. And then I'll know where you decided to put it. That's just an example. So give me any country that we talked about and then pick the category that you think it goes in. I really look forward to hearing your responses, and I will catch you back on Monday for some more social studies and science. Have a great weekend.